We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. And as always, every week, at least as often as possible, we have Ed back on the show. And just for you folks that don't know, I've known Ed a long time, probably 30 years. We worked together on the radio for 20, 25 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So this is a very comfortable homecoming, if you will. Every week when we sit down and talk, it's very comfortable. I mean, it's always comfortable with the listeners on, because we're just having a conversation. But this seems more like a well-oiled machine because you know what the fuck is up. I know what the fuck is up. We know each other, and it makes it so much easier to do. So I
Yeah.
always look forward to this.
Yeah. For folks who don't know, just a quick recap of how Mike and I first got together. We were working at the same station, but I was only doing weekends. I was doing a bluegrass show on Saturday morning and a folk show on Sunday evening. Mike was doing traffic every day during the
Right.
morning show.
Right.
And there was rumors they were going to add a news director, and I hadn't really thought anything about it. But then Gorbachev came to town. He was invited by our governor, Rudy Perpich, who had dual citizenship in Slovenia, I think, or somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, he invited Gorbachev, and Gorbachev took him up on it when he came to Washington. So it was a big deal. But he
It was.
came in on a Sunday afternoon, so they brought Mike in to do traffic because they were having to close down freeways and everything, and happened to be during the shift that I normally worked. So we had to team up and cover this thing, and the powers that be liked our rapport so well that they offered me the news director thing. So Mike essentially gave me a career boost by just being able to talk and have some fun together. And then we did it for actually 27 years after that, Mike.
Wow. Wow. 27 years. And the thing about it is that I didn't realize that's how it all came together, to be perfectly
Yeah.
honest with you. But the ironic thing is they helped put us together because of the rapport we had. And
Yeah.
then after that, they kept telling us you got too much rapport.
Yeah. No shit.
Why don't you pull it back a little bit, those motherfuckers? That's why
Yeah.
that's why I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing now. I don't have some dumb fuck telling us you can't do that. They tell us we can't do
Exactly.
this. And I say, fuck you to
Exactly.
them.
Yeah.
Any anyway, we've got a lot to talk about because there's been a lot going on. And you and I share a frustration that Donald Trump can continue to do the things he does, and some people just don't recognize it. This is the one question that people have out there that frustrate me. They are saying, well, Kamala has never done an interview. She does. We haven't heard her in a debate. She can't talk to an interviewer. She can't answer questions because she's not smart enough. Now, first of all, she's been in public life for a long time. She's
Yeah.
done many interviews. I've seen the interviews. She
Sure you have.
debated she debated Mike Pence. But
Right.
these are coming from fucking people that support a guy who puts on a press conference where he controls everything, even the questions, and he still looks like a dipshit.
Yeah, he won't even interview unless they won't fact check him in real time.
Right.
That's so bogus, and they should not agree to it. See, I'm more pissed off at the media, of which we both used to be a part, and I guess we still are in a sense. But the
Kind of.
corporate media, all they're interested in is a horse race, so they can't tell you the truth about Trump. They suppress the truth about Trump
Yeah.
often because if they were forthcoming about everything, if they brought up the fact that this guy is pretty much a convicted rapist, that he is a has 34 criminal indictments, he's going to be sentenced to something, fines, jail, whatever it is, very shortly.
Yeah.
They don't dwell on this stuff. Anybody else in years past, can you imagine Dwight Eisenhower running against Adlai Stevenson and one of them being like Trump? The newspapers would have vilified that guy right out of town, whichever one it was,
Right.
right on up through Reagan and all the others. I don't know when it got to be that the corporate media said, oh, we've got to, it's not balanced. It's like suppress anything negative or hold back anything positive so that they're dead even all the time.
Well,
And that's what they're doing.
it's like handicaps in
Yeah,
bowling or golf.
yeah,
This guy's
exactly.
I mean, I've said before, Donald Trump is easily the worst presidential candidate from a major party in the history of this country. He's got so much fucking baggage that he shouldn't even be in the conversation. And in spite of what the polls say, even though the polls are now saying that Kamala's ahead, um, I don't see and I don't believe that it's going to even be close come
No.
November. I've always kind of felt that way because of how bad a candidate Donald Trump is, whether it would have been Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Uh, the difference was with Joe and Donnie, you know, it was all about how bad Donnie was. It didn't really matter who was more popular. Now we've got Donnie being as bad as he is and people being terrified of him. Plus, we've got a high powered, very popular candidate. That's why I can't see anything less than a decisive victory, if not a landslide.
Right, and let's take a look at Tim Walz for a second. You know, this bogus, completely swift boating bullshit they're talking about. He didn't go to Iraq with his unit and so forth, even though he retired like 7 or 10 months or something before, after serving 24 years in the National Guard. I mean, a very distinguished record of service, but
Right.
yet they keep bringing this up. It's bogus. It's completely bogus. It shouldn't even be referred to in the media. It should be shouted down every time it comes up. But no, they have to keep bringing it up. CNN, what the hell is the matter with you? Oh, don't. Never mind. I know your
Yeah.
owner's a right-wing twit. That's what's the matter with you. And it's pretty much the same for most of the corporate media because just as an example, right now we're looking at how they were able to negotiate down drug prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the number 10 drugs,
Right.
and they'll do 15 next time and so forth. And the reason they're doing it that way is because that's the only way Congress would agree to do it. But at the same time, every Republican voted against that,
Right.
every one of them. So the Republicans are not for anyone except their corporate masters. That's what the news should be telling people. But no, the news is under the same restrictions. They are also the tools of the corporate masters.
Right. And you have to know that the pharmaceutical companies are in court currently trying to
Mm-hmm.
stop this shit. I
And
mean,
they will continue to do that for
yeah,
sure.
they will. And the problem is if Donald Trump gets back in and you get a more sympathetic DOJ, they might be able to pull that back. And as you said, none of them voted for this. They want anything that has to do with benefiting the middle class or normal folks, they are against. And they are
Yeah.
against it because they're against the middle class and they're against the Democrats. They want to own the libtards. It's pretty appalling that, like you say, we get people who still support Donald Trump, still think he's the answer when time after time over the last 4 years, Joe Biden's done nothing but come up with some almost miraculous shit.
Right.
Infrastructure, getting the hostages back, this pharmaceutical um, discount to people on Medicare. It's truly amazing what he's been able to accomplish in spite of the pushback he gets from the Republicans every friggin' day.
Yeah, I mean, in 3 or 4 years, they'll be looking back and saying what wonderful things Joe did. Right now, for whatever reason, they won't do it because, oh, well, that would be bias. No, it isn't bias. It's the truth. It is the job of the media to tell the truth, not be balanced. Fuck balanced.
Yeah.
I mean, that just means you're ignoring the bad shit. You know, tell the truth. Tell the truth. That's all you have to do. That's your job.
Now, they may have caught Tim Walz in a lie. And I
Oh,
and I think seriously the GOP is trying to make hay out of it because they just have nothing to go against.
yeah,
Have you noticed those little videos that they have with Kamala and Tim Walz talking? It's just kind of a talking
yeah,
about music and shit like that. Well, he brought up the fact that he has his personal favorite is white guy tacos. And Kamala says, what is that? Tuna and mayo or what?" He goes, "No, it's just hamburger and cheese." She goes, "Well, you put any flavor in it?" He goes, "No." And and she said, I was told to warn you that the top level of spice in Minnesota is pepper.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where the GOP thinks they've got him, he also has been known for an award-winning tater tot hot dish that he has a recipe for.
Sure.
And of course, the GOP did a deep dive and went into that recipe, and he had fucking chili powder in there. He lied. How can you have this guy as a vice president when he says he doesn't use spices and that he used spices? Fucking A. I thought it was a joke at first that they were trying to make hay out of it, but they are trying to make something out of that. That's fucking unbelievable to me.
What's unbelievable to me that they're that stupid. Now, granted, I realize that their base is stupid. You don't get to be Trump's base without being literally stupid,
Yeah.
or perhaps what's the word, delusional,
Yeah.
or a part of it is uh, that they're in an echo chamber. A
Right.
lot of them, because a lot of them tend to be in the South or in rural sections of the country where nothing sophisticated gets through. I happen to be sitting in one right now, and they don't pay attention, and the media is all bought. I mean, the newspapers, the TV stations, the radio stations are all owned by right wingers. So anything liberal never gets through unless it's put into entertainment.
Right.
Then it might get through. That's always been the secret of liberalism, is that all of the entertainment is liberal because right wingers can't do it. They can't be funny. They can't. They can't be poignant. They cannot do humor, subtle humor. They can't do anything creative. You get Kurt Cameron's, Left Behind movies and crap like that. You get Kid Rock. You get Ted Nugent, talentless buffoons. That's what the right wings do. But the liberal, everybody who's a good creator is a liberal. So you get subtle messages in there. So, we do have that, and they will never be able to stop that unless they get total control with a guy like Trump, because that's when you start seeing books banned. That's when you start seeing, let's get rid of Animal Farm. I think Tim Walz said that pretty well. The guys sitting around the cafe somewhere, they're not thinking, let's ban Animal Farm. No, they're worried about the price of gas or whatever it might be, But they're not worried about that kind of bullshit. But the Heritage Foundation, those guys, yeah, they do. They realize that they always lose to liberals because liberals have talent and they're able to be subtle and get the message out. So they want to stop that whatever way they can. Remember the Dark Ages? That's what they're aiming for. When the church and the king got together and said, you can only do this kind of art, you can only do this kind of music, and no, you don't need to read. We'll tell you what you need to know. That's what they want to do. A new Dark Ages. That's what Project 2025 is all about.
Yeah. It's interesting. We've got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris coming out yesterday or the day before uh, with this presentation about these uh, discounts to pharmaceutical products to help the middle class and people on Medicare and such. And then Donald Trump comes out with his press conference, his second press conference. You would
Yeah.
think after doing the first press conference and it going badly, that maybe you wouldn't want to do it again. And you could see in this press conference that they tried to make him do what they wanted him to do to focus on prices and that sort of thing. Had all the groceries out next to him,
Yeah.
gave him something to read. And when he started reading it, he seemed very low energy and seemed kind of depressed
Yeah.
about it. And I thought to myself, oh, this ain't going to last long. First of all, he's
No.
throwing data and numbers out there that make no sense. They're kind of mixed up and
Right.
disjointed. And then, of course, he goes off the deep end. And when somebody asks him, you know, your people don't want you to be on the attack to focus on the policies, he has the audacity to come up and say, I'm entitled to attack her.
Yeah.
This guy just is not capable of falling in line and trying to do anything to help himself.
Right. And I gotta say, I am so sick of this attack mentality that somehow or other you elevate yourself by knocking other people down. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. When I see somebody doing that, especially when he's making crap up, and everybody else is terrible.
Right.
Everybody else is a communist, a fascist, or whatever. Everybody else is an idiot. Everybody else but him. That just tells me he is. And if you're sitting next to a guy in a bar who does that, you leave.
Yeah.
Why would you vote for somebody like that?
You run into people like this where you work or even in families, and you do your best to avoid them. I mean, it's almost
It's
embarrassing.
true.
When I look at Donald Trump and I run into somebody like him, I would say, so what you're telling me is the rest of the world is wrong and you're right.
Yeah.
That just cannot be. And that's kind of his thing. No matter what happens, when he loses, it's rigged. When he wins, it's not rigged. I mean, it's so transparent that you can see who he is and what he is. Most people would be embarrassed by exposing themselves that way.
Yeah, but and his twisted mind. I was just saw a thing of him the other day talking. It may have been talking about the boat battery and the shark or something like that.
Yeah.
But he was nobody ever asked me that question before. Maybe it's my connection to MIT. His connection to MIT is he had an uncle who went there and
Right.
who taught there, which has nothing to do with him. But yet he seems to think that that's some sort of connection because he had a relative who was smart that makes him smart. We realize that Donald Trump may be the stupidest man ever elected to any office, much less president. It's insane to me that this man, if you watch one of his speeches, he reveals how stupid he is every time. Every time. He always gets something incredibly wrong. That and that just tells me his followers are just as stupid as he is. They don't read. They don't watch anything but Fox News. They haven't a clue. They didn't study in school. I went to school with them. I know. I mean, it was maybe 20% of my class even read a book.
Yeah.
Much less anything else, or learned how to do simple arithmetic. These people were focused on getting a factory job, and that was it. When those went away, now they mow lawns for a living.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things he said that stuck out to me, and I don't know that he knows or doesn't know. I think he just spills whatever he thinks is going to help him at the moment. But
Mm-hmm.
he said that all the jobs that were created by Joe Biden, all of them,
All of them
100%,
immigrants. Yeah.
100% were all illegal immigrants.
Maybe more than 100%, he
Yeah,
said.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
curious as to how is that Wharton School of Business? Is that a new math or what the fuck? But he'll just say anything and then he'll enhance it to make it sound better. I think it's they say it's this many, but I think it's more. Well, who gives a fuck
Yeah.
what you think? You obviously don't know what you're talking about. But
Hmm.
he will say virtually anything, honestly believing that people will believe what's coming out of his mouth. And the sad thing is, there's a small faction of people that will believe it. There'll be
Yeah.
somebody coming up to me and saying, yeah, all the jobs Biden created were filled by immigrants. Fuck you. That's stupid. That makes no sense.
Exactly. And number one, they're not allowed to work, unless their employer buys fake social security numbers for them, which they do. Immigrant labor is not a problem. It's people who use immigrant labor who are the problems, who
Right.
bring them in to work in the places that the white people won't work. The or anybody who doesn't have to, like the meat processing, the tobacco fields, or whatever fields are still out there. They still do grow tobacco in some places. Cotton.
Like golf clubs in
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Trump, used illegal immigrants there for sure.
yeah, I don't, this tells me, I mean, he's always lied, but to the extent
Right.
he lies now,
Hmm.
smells of desperation. I mean, I think he's really confused at this point because he's used to winning And when he isn't winning, he's used to bullying his way to win, and that bullying's not working anymore.
Yeah.
I think the tide has turned. He once was the new shiny thing, and people were interested because he created a shit show and he was good TV. I think people have finally gotten to the point, and we see it in the rallies and we see it in his press conferences. People are getting bored.
Yeah.
They're hearing the same shit over and over. He can't even write new material.
No, and he has to go back. He's still running against Joe, and sometimes he's running against Obama.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing to me. You have to wonder, the people around him, they can't be as stupid as he is. I wonder how hard they're trying to get him to change his ways. They get him in that spot for a little bit, and then when he gets uncomfortable, it doesn't get the reaction he wants. He always reverts back to the thing that's going to sink him. Um, it's got to be like having an incorrigible child. You tell
Yeah,
them, don't do this, and that just means he's definitely going to do it.
yeah.
There's no way to fix this guy. Mentally, he's in this spot. He's 78 years old. He's not going to change now.
There's nothing worse than an idiot who thinks he's smart.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the most dangerous things there are. I can deal with somebody who's dumb and wants to learn, but if you think you're a genius and you're not, and you have any kind of power, you are fucking dangerous. And I know this because of people we worked for in the past.
Sure. Yeah. And not only that, I mean, every job I've ever had, there's probably been someone like some sort of toxic idiot who's involved with it, and the only way they know to function is to put other people down, make other people feel inadequate or stupid. And they have a bully mentality, and everything is transactional. They have to win everything. They can't compromise. They can't work together. They can't collaborate. This is Trump. This is
Yeah.
Trump 100%. I mean, he had this very small company where he had a couple of guys who were smart enough to work the angles and so forth. And it was no intelligence on his part other than he was able to inherit the money to pay these people to begin with. And, they set it up for him so he could pretend to be this mogul. But there's nothing intelligent about him at
No.
all, ever.
No, he's surprisingly stupid. Now you said something earlier that you wouldn't be surprised if this guy just pops. And I've said that
Yeah.
for a while. I said, I'm not sure he makes it to the November election. We're getting close now, and he may make it. But I've always thought the pressure and everything that's hanging over his head could cause him to literally implode mentally or physically. Do you still think that's a possibility, or can he hold on to this until November 5th? I hope he does now.
I crave seeing him beaten, defeated, and knowing it. But we know what's going to happen. Election night at 6 o'clock, when they come out and say he's lost, because I do expect that it's going to be such a huge blue tsunami that every exit poll will show that he has already lost
Yeah.
before the polls close by a long shot. It won't be any of this waiting until the morning to see. I think it'll be very, very definitive. At this point, I really do, because the Democrats are fired up and people are volunteering and people are get out there and they're going to. The one caveat to that is I know the Republicans are going to try to steal. They are. They're gearing up for it. They're trying to empower these local officials to reject the votes and the certification and so forth. I'm hoping that can be dealt with legally beforehand, so it's not a problem. But as much as I would like to see him crumble, he won't. If he's still around, if he's still alive, he will claim, just what he did last time, that there's some sort of bogus thing going on. And he'll try to drive up another January 6th reaction of, armed insurrection of some sort. I'm hoping they're prepared for that as well. I want to see what happens at the convention next week. I mean, I was around for the '68 convention, And that was a shit show, believe me, in
Yeah.
Chicago. I think they learned a lot from that, and maybe they'll be able to deal with it, because I really do believe the Roger Stones of the world will be trying to gin up whatever they can at the convention to make it look like the Democrats are Republicans and
Right.
ruthless and
Right.
that sort of thing. But I do think that when a narcissist like him, who's not very bright, who is facing jail time, sees the walls closing in. I mean, he's already said, if I lose, I'm going to run away to Venezuela, right?
Good
Well,
luck with that.
good luck with that, right? Number one, Venezuela don't want you, but and the other thing is, of course, he's a felon. He can't flee.
Right. Well, and some people have even asked Judge Marchand to take his passport,
Yeah, he should.
which would be reasonable. I mean, he's got the
Mm-hmm.
ability to take flight, and
Yeah,
if he's lost the election, there's no reason to stay.
right.
So maybe they should. I don't know if they will or not. But don't you think, a lot of people say, well, he'll just do what he did in 2020. I think there's a big difference though, because I
Mm-hmm.
think the power that he will wield will be far less. Everything that he's going to do in 2024, he's already done in 2020. There's no surprises, and people have made some plans to deal with what he has to deal with. And even if he does what he did in 2020, it goes to the appellate court and they say, no, we're not going to hear this. I mean, he's not going to get away with anything. He's not going to be able to steal the election. And I just think that after, not only if Donald Trump loses, but the down ballot people lose, the Republicans, the few normal Republicans will have had enough. They're going to
Yeah.
separate themselves from Donald Trump because he's done nothing but lose for them.
I think there's going to be some pushback on him too. I don't know if you're familiar with what just happened with him, and I think it's Barbara Edelman, the widow of Sheldon Edelman. He was a casino magnate
Right,
that
right.
gives huge $90 million and that sort of thing to Republican causes. And Trump had one of his aides send her a really nasty note saying she was funding rhinos. Now, I don't know if it meant that he wanted more money or if he had grudges against some of the Republicans that she was funding. I don't know, but they're supposed to be having a meeting at Bedminster here today, I think, where apparently he'll have to grovel and apologize, I guess. I don't know. But apparently she was pretty well put off by the wording of whatever text messages or whatever he sent her. So when he starts fucking with his funders, that's good news for us.
And we got one problem with him groveling and apologizing. He doesn't do that.
No.
I mean, he's the one where the evangelicals are kind of hitting back at him, where the video comes out when somebody asked him if he ever asked God for forgiveness.
I
He says,
never needed
nah,
to.
I don't need to. I don't
Yeah.
need to. I mean, there are
Mhm.
some people like that. I have told this story before. My mother-in-law, who was just not a good person. I'm sorry, she wasn't. She was on her deathbed, and um, she had this woman from the Caribbean. She's a nurse, lovely lady,
Mhm.
and she was trying to take care of my mother-in-law, and it was coming close to the end. And she said, why don't you ask Jesus for forgiveness? And on her deathbed, she said, I don't have to ask anybody for forgiveness. I don't owe anybody anything. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, what, even if you don't believe, and she was a Catholic,
Yeah.
but even if
There
you
you
don't
go.
believe, why not work with the odds? Try to get the odds in your, but there are certain people of a mindset that it's only about them, and that's how Donald Trump is. The idea that he might apologize to this Edelman woman, I don't. It's going to be some attempt at an apology, but it's going to be couched with some slam because he cannot
Yeah.
be wrong. He just refuses to be wrong.
Right. Now, and that's a very well taken point, because as a recovering evangelical, recovered, I should say, evangelical, I hold these people's feet to the fire whenever I can because I used to be there. And if I can get over it, so can they. The simple fact, if you elevate a guy like Donald Trump, who is an obvious sinner,
Yeah.
and you're an apologist for him, you've just violated your faith. Take Trump for example. Now, he's never been to a church that I know of. Maybe as a kid. He certainly doesn't go to a church now, and I really don't think necessarily you have
No.
to be devout. It's not required, but at the same time, I do know the precepts. Okay, and one of those is adultery. Now, this guy cheated on all his wives. Plus, he's married to a woman. He's been divorced twice, and
Yeah.
he's married to his current wife.
Melania.
He's living by the precepts of Christianity. He's living in adultery with his present wife. He should ask forgiveness for that, or he is unforgiven.
Right.
You see, but they gloss over that. And there's a million other things. I mean, I could go down the list. I could go through the Bible and give you 400 things probably that he's remiss on, that he should be asking forgiveness for, if, as he says, he's a Christian, which of course he isn't. He doesn't know what that means, quite frankly. He really doesn't. So anybody, any Christian, any pastor, certainly any preacher who defends this guy is a fraud.
Yeah.
You're simply a fraud. If you are elevating Donald Trump and you're in the ministry in any way, you're a fraud.
Now, did you hear? I don't know how this turned out, but I heard that there was a Zoom call, evangelicals for Harris. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that there are a number of them, and that personally, I hate when religious people um, individually, you can vote for anybody you want. You can support whoever you want. Okay, I think, but when an organization supports someone, it troubles me, no matter which side it's on.
Right.
But it does encourage me that there are evangelicals who are breaking away and saying, "Hey, she's way better than Trump."
Well, having been an evangelical, uh, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I've been too harsh with the sweeping statements I've made about evangelicals. You know, they're all enemies of this country. I have said that, and I've been called out for it before, but I don't give a fuck. Is it conceivable that there is different factions within the evangelicals? Some that are kind of normal, like some kind of normal Republicans, and the others off the deep end? Or are they all
Yeah,
pretty much in the same mindset?
really, it's kind of a broad definition that doesn't really, it's very hard to define. I guess there's certain precepts that you have to, biblical inerrancy may be one, that sort of thing. But I know some very fine evangelicals. I know some terrific people who spend most of their time doing things for other people, but are also evangelicals. I don't think that most of those people support Trump, though, because they're not blind.
Right.
They're just very religious. They're very much into keeping the commandments and so forth for themselves. They tend not to judge other people because that's not what they're supposed to do, and they tell me that. It's not for me to judge someone else. I've got enough riding herd on myself. I know plenty of these people who are good, solid people that you would love to be around, but that don't judge. They may witness to you on occasion, and that's fine. If they want to do that, I don't have a problem with it. But at the same time, they do good works and they are good people and they're evangelical and they probably don't support Donald Trump because they're not idiots.
Now, did you see how the Harris campaign came out with something referencing religion, and they ran a video of Billy Graham?
Yeah, his granddaughter's supporting her.
Right, granddaughter. And then his son, Franklin Graham, came out and admonished them for doing that. I mean, here's a
Yeah,
perfect example. I don't know a lot about Billy Graham, but I remember from when I was young and, hearing what he had to say, he seemed like a relatively decent guy. Franklin, on the other hand, is a problem.
Well, Billy was always problematic. He cozied up to power,
Right,
two
right.
presidents, whether it was Nixon or Reagan or Clinton or I think George Bush at one point, gave Billy Graham credit for him becoming a Christian, that sort of thing. But he also, in the beginning, was very close to a man who was basically a racist. And well, being from Minneapolis, you know that Graham has a big presence there, and that
Right.
he was, involved with a university there, and his movie making thing it was there, and that sort of thing. Toward the end of his life, he did come out against this right wing kind of involvement in politics. Franklin, on the other hand, is a turd, and he's always been a turd, and so is his sister. Franklin and Billy did not get along. Franklin started up his own ministry, like a, what do they call it? Like an evangelical ministry to Africa and different places and so forth. But he's always been very much into politics. He's always been very much into this hateful Christianity, and
Right.
so has Billy's daughter. They're two peas in a pod. The granddaughter, however, is much more in line with her grandfather, I think, toward the end of his life.
Wow. It's amazing how there's always been supposed to be a split between church and state. Uh, and while the church is really heavily involved in the Republican Party, there's always been a thin thread between them, hasn't it? It's always
Yeah.
been at the base of politics.
Well, religion can be used for power. I mean, if that's why I was talking about the Dark Ages before. That was what made the Dark Ages dark. This symbiotic relationship between the church and the king, or whatever despot was around. They always came together to suppress and to exploit the common people. That's been a theme forever, and that's why when the founding fathers did this country, they made sure that that didn't happen. And you'll have some evangelicals saying, "Oh no, they wanted the church to be in part of the government." They did not. It's
No,
very much clear that they did not. And I think Madison said it best when he said, "We want to keep this out so that we're not blood soaked like Europe." I'm paraphrasing, but
right.
basically, then that's what he said. Because anytime you get church and state together, you get a lot of dead people. Okay.
Well, over and above taxation in England, the church was huge in power there. They were trying to get
Sure.
away from that as well. It felt like they were being forced to be what they wanted them to be. And the whole point of coming to the United States, or the New World, if you will, was freedom of religion, which means you don't get to force your shit on other people.
Let me give you one correction on that. Okay.
Absolutely.
The pilgrims, okay, the ones that we celebrate every Thanksgiving, they wanted religious freedom for themselves.
Right.
Okay. They founded a colony where they had the specific religion, and nobody else could practice anything else. They threw out a guy named Roger Williams, who went over and created Rhode Island, and declared religious liberty. Anybody could be there. William Penn did the same thing in Pennsylvania, and down in Virginia, Thomas Jefferson offered an amendment that got in there. One of his proudest accomplishments was a religious freedom statute there to protect the Baptists from being harassed by the Church of England people. But during the time of, okay, Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce. Pope wouldn't let him have one, so he destroyed the Catholic Church in England and created Church of England, okay, just so he could get married again. And made the Archbishop of Canterbury the English Pope and so forth. And then his daughter came in, who was Catholic, and killed a bunch of Protestants. They went back and forth for a while. And her son's James, of King James Version of the Bible, who
Right.
was number one, gay, and number two, a despot, and had the Bible rewritten to suit him. So the King James Version is probably the worst version of the Bible you're ever going to find, and plagiarized too. But anyway, the religion in England, religion in the United States has always been a problem. But in Europe, it was Protestants and Catholics killing each other for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the founding fathers, being men of the Enlightenment, deist at least mostly, which means, yeah, there's probably a higher power up there, but it doesn't take much interest in us. Okay.
Right.
That's pretty much where they were. So we don't want anything in the government that supports any particular religion. And that's the story of America, folks.
Well, the thing about religion too, it's real easy to say, I believe this because God told me this, and how are you supposed to argue that? When I lived in Arizona and I dealt with the Mormons, they would come and I would ask hard questions. And when they couldn't answer the hard question, they say, well, I feel a beating or a warmth in my heart, meaning I don't
Mhm.
have an answer, but God told me so. It's got to be so. And that's always been a problem for me. You don't get to do that in politics. You better have facts to back up what you say. Well, up until Donald Trump, of course, but this is why religion and politics don't work. They have different criteria for what people believe.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the church is able to levy a lot of money that they can throw one way or another. And that always influences lots of things. That's why the Mormons have, the power they do. They have a lot of funds that they can use. But I mean, if ever there was sorry, Mormons, but you've got a bogus religion. Joseph Smith made it up. He said, I found these gold tablets, an angel showed me where they were, but I lost them.
Yeah.
Sorry, come on, same with Scientologists. I mean, you got a bogus religion. Here's a science fiction writer decided I can make some money on this, so he created your religion, both bogus.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's
I could say that about some others, but and let me put it this way: if you've got 15 denominations all saying different things and claiming to be Christians, which one do you go with?
yeah.
Which is the Christian religion that we're supposed to be following if we're supposed to be a Christian nation. Are Mormons Christian? The Baptist would say no. Are the Seventh Day Adventist Christian? Baptist would say no. Are the Catholics Christian? Heavens no. If you ask a Catholic, we're it, buddy. So you got all these Christian denominations all claiming to be it, all claiming to have a direct line to God, and yet they're all disagreeing. So who gets to be on top? If tomorrow we say, okay, we're a Christian nation, all right, who do
That's
we listen to? Who do
that's
we
why
listen to?
that's why I've always said I don't join clubs, whether it be political parties or
Yeah.
religious groups. Um, if you believe in God, you can talk to God directly. I don't need anybody to be the middleman. Fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Jewish, the Old Testament means something, okay? It's part of your culture, right? And it is in essence, it is a covenant between the Jewish people and God. That's what they would say, right?
Right.
Between a nation of people and God. Christianity is a personal religion. It's between one person and God, and his intermediary, or whatever. But uh, to to try to codify that into some sort of government is a fool's errand. And it's worse than that because ultimately you're going to try to beat somebody into submission and get them to believe the way you do.
Right.
And that's why it's always a bad idea. It's never been a good idea. There's never been a good blend of church and state. It just doesn't work.
Absolutely. We're going to take a break, but this is one of the reasons why I like having you on here and why people like listening, because you always bring some historical knowledge to it, stuff that I couldn't do. So people always love hearing the historical or learn something, if you will. And you always bring that, so I appreciate it.
Well, I just make it up.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Anyway, we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Ed is with us today. Got a rousing talk of everything from religion to dipshits. And let's take it a step farther. We had this this get together of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden on stage. It was the first
Sure.
time since Kamala became the presumptive nominee. That was good to see. I mean,
Yeah.
it's nice to see, and I think it's important for the people to see the actual warmth between Kamala and Joe, and the warmth between Kamala and Tim Walz. I think this just sets an entirely different tone from what we've been going through for the past 8 years.
Yeah, and you saw some warmth that was actual and real
Right.
between the two of them. Part of it has to do, I think, with Joe is and actually Minch. I mean, he's a really good guy,
Yeah.
and he's taking this with as much grace as possible. We all know that he really didn't want to bow down or to step out. I'm sure. But he's doing it with grace, and he is putting his influence behind Kamala. I mean, all he had to do was stand back and it would have sent a message. But no, he's there. And he told her, he told everybody she would make a hell of a president, which is great. And I'm glad to see that. I don't think, we've had one actor as president, and that was Ronald Reagan, and he wasn't a very good actor or president.
No.
But he did have, he was able to fake some stuff. Joe doesn't fake. I can't think of a single president who's been able to do it actually. I mean, Trump tries, certainly, but he's so transparent, it's ridiculous unless you're stupid. But it's nice to see real emotion between these two people. They obviously like each other, and Joe is supporting her. I see that with her and Tim Walz also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kamala and Tim, and yes, her last name is Harris. And anybody who's, I mean, this is another thing. These Republicans are so insanely disheveled, or whatever you want to say, and trying to make a thing out of the fact that people tend to use her first name. Well, they did that with Hillary too. Remember,
Yeah.
it's they tend to do that with women. I mean, everybody knew Hillary's last name was Clinton, but they rarely referred to her as Clinton. They always
Right.
referred to as Hillary.
Right.
It's a trick that people play to diminish someone. Now, they should call her Kamala Harris or Vice President Harris or Madam Vice President or whatever. The familiar is not always the best way to go. Let me put it that way.
No.
But because it's a game, especially that some men play to try to make the woman lesser by, isn't she cute? She's Kamala. Well, that's working against them because it's easier to remember.
Well, it is, and I got shit for that from one person. They said, "You call her Kamala, and you should call her Kamala Harris because it's disrespectful." And I personally think it has more to do with intent um,
Always.
as opposed to efficiency. You know,
Yeah.
maybe it is familiar, but when I do that with Kamala or Joe, it's uh, it's more so me saying they're one of us.
Yeah, I agree with
They're
that. And
one of us.
that's a good illustration because everybody calls him Joe, not Biden.
Yeah.
Except, people who don't like him call him Biden.
Right, right. And Kamala Harris, I explained to somebody, I said, if it's disrespectful to call her Kamala, is it disrespectful to call him Elvis or Beyonce or any of these other things? This is a
Yeah.
term of endearment. It's not a slight, especially if you happen to like that person. What's a slight is when somebody like Donald Trump purposely mispronounces her first name.
Right.
And I get tired sometimes of people just looking for things to bitch about. I'm
Yeah.
smart. We get this in radio all the time. You make one little mistake and they want to point it out. And it pisses me off because we make mistakes, and it's not a
Yeah.
big deal. And it's just always one person saying, you said this and you should have meant this. Well, am I supposed to be fucking perfect? Jesus Christ. Um, but the thing about the warmth and the affection that I saw isn't just between Kamala and Joe. This is the intriguing thing. The people in the stands that day, They absolutely adore Joe Biden. Joe Biden's
Yeah,
going to leave office as one of the most beloved presidents in the history of, certainly in our lifetimes. And I find that interesting given so many people wanted him to step aside. Do they
yeah.
love him now more because he did do that
I
selfless
think
act?
so. I think so. I know I do. I have a great deal of respect for him. I did already, but I have much more respect for him to say he looked and he saw um, that it would be an uphill battle for him, that Trump could exploit that performance of his at the debate forever, and that he couldn't come back from that. And to be able to realize that and to suck it up and step aside is probably the most selfless thing I've ever seen a politician do.
Yeah.
Period. Period. One thing about, and you just reminded me of this, Tim Walz, who I tend to call Tim.
Timmy. I call him Timmy
Timmy, yeah. Well, you know
because
you're from
we're
Minnesota, so
Minnesota boys.
yeah. But he's taken a lot of guff, and most of it because of J.D. Vance, who called him out saying he had carried a weapon of war in war and hadn't it was stolen glory, stolen valor, whatever, which is bullshit. I remember my first sergeant when I was in basic training. Um, he was a this huge black guy who was he was a nice guy, but you don't expect in a drill sergeant, right? You know
Right.
what the stereotype is,
Right.
right? But he was more like a grandfather kind of figure, and he would give these little speeches sometimes, and he said, "Right now, you think you're a trainee, but you're at war. You don't know it because you got brothers on the battlefield right now at war. You're at war. Anytime one of your brothers is in danger, you are at war. Remember that. Anytime one of your brothers is in danger, you are at war." So by that token, and then I remember that clear as a bell, him saying that, and I took it to heart at the time. And it reminds you that just because nobody's shooting at you doesn't mean there isn't somebody out there being shot at. And Tim Wall spent 24 years in the National Guard. And let me just say this right now, that George Bush and George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld need their asses kicked for sending the National Guard off because they didn't have enough troops to attack a country that they didn't need to attack.
Right.
They sent the National Guard to Iraq when the National Guard is supposed to be here at home, defending the home front, dealing with natural disasters and so forth. And most of their training isn't geared toward the battlefield. So they had to get up to speed, and their service is even more admirable because of that. Now, Tim spent 24 years. He could have retired after 20. He spent
Right.
24. And every summer, he was out there on his break from school, he was out there working with the National Guard. And you don't get to be a command sergeant major unless you got something on the ball. Sorry. I salute Vance for his 4 years in the Marines, even though probably I don't think he fired a weapon.
No.
But, he has nothing to stand on there. I'm sure Tim had to qualify every year with this M16. I know I did when I was in the Army. Every year we had to requalify with it. So he's fired that weapon many, many times. He knows the tactics. He's gone through the exercises and so forth. And just because he wasn't physically on the battlefield, they could have gone at any point, right? They were prepared. They were working every summer and 1 weekend a month training. So there was no stolen valor or glory there. It was just a slight misspeak. He wouldn't have said it that way if he thought about it, I'm sure. But let's just clear that up right now and let it go, media, because it's bogus bullshit.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that bothers me is it's one thing for like Donald Trump or some civilian to denigrate somebody else's service. That's pretty egregious. But when another service member denigrates another service member's service and he knows better, that is fucking horrible
Yeah,
because he knows
exactly.
better. He understands what the circumstances are. He knows better. He's just saying this shit for his own benefit. And that says a lot about integrity.
Exactly. And, no member of the Trump family has ever served in the military.
Nope.
And another comment of his just resurfaced where he said the Medal of Freedom is better than the Medal of Honor because you don't wind up dead to get the Medal of Freedom. And he
Yeah.
gave those out like chiclets to Rush Limbaugh and Sheldon Adelman, whose
Yeah.
only thing was giving money to Republicans. He gave him the Medal of Freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. That really kind of diminished that whole award.
It did. It totally did.
Yeah. The damage he did to this country and the integrity of this country is going to take years and years to recover from. And when I watch Donald talk about the military, it's like he sees it as a chessboard and they are just pawns for him to decide what to do.
Yeah,
He talked about the suckers and losers over in Normandy. He talks about military like it's his personal force to do his bidding. And and
exactly.
and that's the problem with him becoming president. Everything is a tool and or a weapon for him to benefit him. And this is why you and I were talking about it before. How is it that people don't see that? Or do they just not care?
I in the culture I'm in, people venerate soldiers here. Right now, there's a gentleman whose mother collected all of the Rogersville Reviews, the newspaper, over 60 years, and he puts up clippings from them on Facebook. Every day he puts up something, and he puts up, somebody who went and served in the army, and it always gets lots of likes and approbation, which it should. Soldiers are venerated down here, and how they can possibly not see that Trump, uh, number one, I think he is a coward, so I think he hates soldiers. He dodged the draft. Everybody knows that. With his bogus bone spurs, he found a doctor who would write his father, I believe it was,
Right.
according to his um, nephew. It was Trump's father who found the doctor who would sign off on the bone spurs thing. Here's a guy who avoided the draft, who's never served. Nobody in his family has ever served. He calls them suckers and losers. And he just came out with the one about the Medal of Honor and the Medal of Freedom, and how he always wanted a Purple Heart. Remember, somebody gave him one, and he said, "This is better because I didn't have to earn it." That kind of crap just drives me up a wall, that anybody who has served or knows anyone who has served can vote for this guy. It's a slap in the face to every soldier, man and woman, who's ever served their country. Every one of them. Any vote for Trump is a slap in the face to our military and to the individual members who make it up.
Yeah, I have to wonder if something crazy happened and he ever got elected as president, if he would put himself in for a Purple Heart for that phony fucking assassination attempt.
Oh, probably. Which, we need to take just a quick look at that too. I mean, I'm a quick healer. I still think it's fake blood. I don't know. This thing is still rankles me the way it came down, and I'm still wanting to see that FBI report, uh, and see exactly. There's something rotten here. There's something strange going on here.
Well,
I'm sorry. You look at his ear now. We know it wasn't a bullet because it would have taken the ear off.
right.
He was talking, people were asking him about it at one of his rallies, or maybe it was an interview. And he said, well, yeah, it hit the top, the lobe. So, he doesn't even know where an earlobe is.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, an ear isn't too hard to separate from your head because, it's
Right.
just thin skin there and it should have done some damage. Do you think that's something? I know the FBI is investigating it, and Donald Trump is going to be questioned about it. Clearly, something weird happened there. People always say, well, the evidence and this guy. The problem here isn't evidence. The problem here is that there's zero evidence of anything
Right.
other
Yeah.
than the guy was on the roof and he took the shot. But we aren't we entitled as a country to know what happened just by virtue of him being a former president and an
Absolutely.
assassination attempt? And the
We
other thing,
need to see the medical report. We
yeah,
need to see the photographs that the doctors took. And the drawings that they did, when you go in, there's always a record, and they've suppressed that.
how can they do that though? I mean, I don't understand. What is it that Donald Trump has that allows him to put that kind of pressure on to not release it? I mean, it's like his fucking his school records. It should be
Yeah,
an easy thing to get.
yeah.
The
They
doctor's
just
record should be easy.
Yeah, well, he's threatened to sue. This is a good thing. I'm glad you brought it up because he used to talk about the Wharton School all the time. Wharton School is a graduate school, so I'm not sure he was ever actually admitted to the Wharton School. He studied at Penn as an undergraduate, but I don't know if he ever really made it into the Wharton School. So that's kind of a moot point, but our point you can argue about. But the other thing is, we have at least one professor who said he was the dumbest guy he ever met. I personally, knowing guys like Trump, I don't think he ever cracked a book. I don't think he ever studied. His father bought him a way in, as
Yeah.
they do, just like every other rich person does. It's not hard to get into Harvard if you got $1 million.
Well, when you watched him in this press conference, the second press conference, I know there's been a lot of talk about, we talked about Joe Biden. He's slow, he's stuttering, he's diminished, so he has to step aside. Um, Donald Trump has his moments when he seems clear sounding, but the content of what he's saying is just absolutely bizarre. And then you had the thing with Elon Musk,
Oh my
where
God.
it sounded like he was slurring and lisping, and I was
Yeah.
waiting for him to say "thuffering thuckatash." And then he tries to say it was a technical problem. Now you and
Yeah,
I worked in radio and
we
recording
know that.
studios and stuff. Is it possible that he could have been given a list because of some technical reason? I don't think so. I don't know
I
what that
don't
would
think
be.
so. No, there is no, and Elon didn't have one. They
No.
were being recorded at the same time. No, I think he was on drugs of some sort, quite frankly,
Yeah.
something that was making his lips not work right, and probably Adderall. Who knows? He'd want to get pumped up for it. There was a lot in that interview to scare the shit out of people, quite frankly. And the big one for me, where they were talking about um, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where Elon brings up, well, they were both, bombed, nuclear bombs, and now the cities are back, and that's not quite so scary, is it? And Trump goes along with that, and nobody in the media that I know pushed back that, number one, these were rudimentary A bombs. The megatonnage was very small, more like what we could call a tactical nuclear weapon, but yet there are still there. If you go to Nagasaki, Hiroshima at the memorials, you see shadows of people on the wall who were vaporized. That's
Right.
pretty damn scary, if you ask me.
That's pretty scary.
And not only that, but the weaponry we have today is so um, astronomically more powerful. Yeah, it's scary. And what neither one of them seem to realize is that once the first bomb goes, then all the bombs go. And
Yeah.
we have, the submarines, and the you've seen Doctor Strangelove, where they had the doomsday machine that if one bomb falls, that's real.
Yeah.
That actually will happen. All of them will be fired off at each other, and we'll all die unless somebody intervenes somehow.
Right.
I know a lot of them, you have to have two keys turned at the same time, that kind of thing. But I've got to believe that there are override mechanisms. I also believe we have nuclear missiles in space on platforms, both us and the Russians. Doomsday is doomsday when the first bomb falls. And
Right.
anybody who isn't scared by that is a moron.
I was God, this fucking cold. I was going to ask you about Elon Musk. He's supposed to be bright, but when I listened to that recording, this guy sounds dumb as fuck too. Talk about stuttering and not being able to hold a fucking thought.
Mhm.
Is that
Uh,
just me, or did you get that sense too?
I think he has a kind of intelligence that's very focused. And I think that you'll find this with a lot of people that we call brilliant. They may be brilliant in one area, but in other areas, they want to be smart in every way. And they're not. Like Elon obviously has no emotional intelligence, and he's probably not big on literature and philosophy and that sort of thing. You know, he may know some mathematics, may know some engineering and so forth. But remember what Elon basically is. He's like Peter Thiel. He's a money guy. You know, he's like Bill Gates for that matter. I mean, Bill Gates is smart, but he bought DOS. You know, I mean, they had money. They came in. I give them credit for what they did in expanding an industry into something that we'd never seen before. But they didn't do it alone, and mostly it was that they were able to use the money that they were able to get their hands on from IBM for Bill Gates and for the Emerald Mine from that his father owned from Musk, and Trump getting $400 million from his father that he squandered. Um, uh, these guys they're money people. And by threatening and doing whatever they do, they're able to get other people to do their work for them, and that's essentially what Musk is. And um, they're all megalomaniacs. They really are.
Do you think the media should be looking at Trump's cognitive ability? Because
Absolutely.
they certainly did with Joe Biden, but they seem to just ignore it with Donald Trump. Is that because the Republicans don't care?
Uh, no, I think it's because it's corporate media and they don't care. I think that, quite frankly, that it comes down from the top, from everybody, including MSNBC to a degree, um, that hands off that on Trump. You know, I mean, you can air it and people can do their own conclusions, but we don't want you talking about it. Who's the guy who's on late on MSBC? Lawrence
Lawrence
uh,
O'Donnell.
O'Donnell. He went off on the media, including his own channel, for airing that impromptu interview from Mar-a-Lago with Trump without any sort of fact checking or anything like that. I mean, it was basically an hour-long Trump commercial that went on all the networks, and they did that the last time too when he was running against Hillary. Every word that came out of his mouth, they would treat like gospel, and nobody would question. You know, and they're doing it again. And we really have to take a look. I was just reminded that we just passed the anniversary of when Nixon resigned, and also the end of the fairness doctrine under Reagan. That
Yeah.
changed a lot of things, and also the corporate concentration of the media, like corporate concentration of everything else, has the justification for getting rid of the fairness doctrine was that cable had evened the playing field, and now all opinions were getting out there, so you didn't have to necessarily tell both sides of everything, which was bullshit, of course. And with media consolidation, now we've got a few voices, but they're all saying the same thing, and it's all controlled media. It's only
Yeah.
things like this podcast where you'll get the truth, where we will tell you straight up that these people are lying by omission. They're not letting you know that Trump is basically a dithering idiot,
Now, now,
and they're treating him like a viable candidate, which he is not.
no, he's not he never was a viable candidate. It was the media that built him up and gave him some credibility. But do you think, I understand what Lawrence O'Donnell was saying, because that's what they did in 2015. They just aired everything he did. But don't you think that by airing that, that actually worked against Donald Trump as opposed to helping him this time around because of what people feel? I mean, the advantage there is that whenever Fox or somebody talks about Donald Trump, they hide the negative stuff. But when he's out there talking live and his followers watch him, they got to be able to see what's actually going on unedited and unprocessed. So in some respects, them running that particular press conference, which was a joke, may work against Donald Trump. He just doesn't realize it.
I think with intelligent people, it does, but intelligent people aren't supporting Trump to begin with. Most people listen uncritically. They don't know how to listen critically.
Yeah.
Um, it, Marshall McLuhan had it right when he said the medium is the message, in the sense that if I put you up there and you're supposed to be a political candidate, that's how I see you. If I put you up there and you're supposed to be a successful businessman, who is firing people for not measuring up, that's the way I see you. If I'm unsophisticated, I believe what I see. I don't question it. And I do think that every time that he has given a forum where he is not fact checked, that the uncritical do not. They don't know how to. They take what he says, if they even understand it. What they're seeing this guy who is a political candidate, and he's supposedly the successful business guy, so maybe he knows how to run a country, which is, of
Right.
course, bogus bullshit. But they don't have critical thinking skills because they never developed them.
Well, Trump said something in the recent press conference, and I thought this has already been clarified and fixed, and people understand what it is. Because I get people saying this to me, and I have to straighten them out. He said that Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline and cost 48,000 jobs. None
Mm-hmm.
of that is true.
No. Number one, he didn't shut it down because it was never built. I mean, the Keystone Pipeline is open. It's always been open. It was the Keystone XL that was never built, that
Right.
Biden stopped them from building because it was only going to transport tar sands oil from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico for export, because it's so dirty we don't refine it in this country.
Right.
So it added nothing to us. And there were the construction jobs to construct it would have lasted a couple of years, and then they would have been gone. And then there's some pipeline tending stuff, but most of that's electronic, and they still leak. By the way, what the media should be saying is that we are a petroleum exporting country, that we are totally energy independent now. We import some light sweet crude because that's what we can refine. We don't refine the other. We export that. So totally, we are exporting more than we're importing.
I saw that.
We,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the fact. So anything he says about the price of gas or oil or anything else being affected by Biden is just bullshit. If you look, all of the oil companies are recording record profits. And
Right.
he wants to say, when I'm president, we'll drill, drill, drill. Bullshit. They don't want to drill anymore. They're closing down the offshore things because they just leak, and they don't want to open up new wells by drilling because they can frack it. It's a whole new ball game. Drilling is bullshit. It's last century.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Well, that Kamala came out with her economic plans, and she has some legitimate strategies for the child tax credit and the pharmaceuticals and that sort of stuff. But when it comes to Donald Trump, what he's supposed to be talking about economy, it all breaks down into all the things he says he's going to do, but never tells us how he's going to do it. The only thing he does say is drill, baby, drill. And
Yeah.
and and what Republicans fail to understand is we've never produced more oil in this country than we are currently today. Not even
Right.
when Donald Trump was in office. He's just got some buzzword that somebody said and he can't fucking let it go.
Right. Exactly. And the other part of it is the government doesn't control who drills. I mean, they can open up things and say you can drill there,
Yeah.
the Arctic Reserve or whatever, but the government doesn't drill or do it. It's private companies. And once they have the oil, they can do with it whatever they want. They can, and mostly what they'll do is export it to the
Right.
people who will pay the most. If we're paying the most here, it stays here. If Saudi Arabia or whoever wants it, Korea, whatever, it'll go there because it's based on who will pay the most for it. It's not like it's the government doing it. These are private companies, and that they will do with it what they will. And plus, of course, I don't know why with all these companies making these huge profits that we're subsidizing them. You
Yeah.
know, get rid of that. That's one savings right there.
It's interesting how lame that whole statement is. Correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when he says drill, baby, drill, what's the origins of that phrase?
Well, it goes back to
Sarah Palin.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was
You're
going to
you're
say
you're stealing
McCain's candidacy.
you're
Yeah,
stealing quotes from Sarah Palin. That gives you
yeah,
some idea what kind of credibility that dumb motherfucker has.
exactly. So yeah, it's something that resonates with the hillbillies, with the guys who like to roll coal. I mean, these guys they don't understand where anything to do with economics or oil or gas or anything else. There's a gas station here in town that sells real gas for with no additives and so forth for twice the price, and these people line up to buy it.
Have you ever used it? Does it make any difference?
Of course, it doesn't. I suppose if you're running a dragster or something, maybe I don't know, but I don't think it makes any difference at all. I run. The only thing I've ever run is the cheapest, whatever I
Yeah,
can get.
yeah,
And it's got ethanol in it, probably. I'm not sure. It seems to run just fine.
yeah. I heard I was watching, I've been seeing on TikTok a lot, uh, the Trumplefucks out there. And I said on this TikTok, their TikToks kind of remind me of me. And the reason it reminds me of me because they're going out there and they're starting to feel some pressure. And they're out there trying to reassure folks, oh, we're fine. Your Lord and
Mhm.
Savior's going to win in November. Everything's fine. And one guy said this, and I literally laughed out loud because it was so stupid. He says, yeah, and Kamala really messed up when she brought on Tim Walz as the vice presidential candidate. That is the absolute worst choice of vice presidential nominee in the history of this country, says the guy who is supporting the guy who picked JD fucking Vance. It's just
Exactly.
it's just fucking unbelievable to me that when I see them, it's almost like they're trying to reassure themselves. Now, I always gave people hope and said, hey, don't worry about this, don't worry about that. But there was some hope.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, there is no more hope. It's over
Mhm.
for Donald Trump.
From your lips to God's ears, they say. Absolutely. There's dirty tricks available. We know they're capable, and we know that they're probably already in the works. And the thing that scares me as a recovered evangelical is I see these guys, I know these guys, the guys that are behind Project 2025. These guys want a new dark ages. Believe me, they
Oh, no
want
question.
the church and the king in charge. They want the schools only, teaching only the Bible. Probably they certainly don't want them teaching science or anything else. They'll teach them the world is flat. They'll teach them that the dinosaurs were really dragons, and any bullshit they can come up with. They want this stuff taught because they don't want a smart populace. They don't want people who understand things. They want people who will obey. That is what they want. They want you to obey. They want women to be baby factories and nursemaids and cooks and cleaners. That's what they want. They don't want women doing anything else, and they will do anything they can to make that happen. These people are insane. They are simply insane, and they cannot be allowed to have power at all. None of them,
I,
none. And that includes J.D. Vance.
I know when I first got married, I hit my wife with that. You're going to be a baby factory. You're going to cook. And she said, no. So we didn't do that. We,
No.
for my own safety, we did not do that. But what's interesting is this Project 2025 has become exposed. So it is a
Mhm.
detriment to the Republican Party. It's a detriment to Donald Trump. And as much as they try to run away from it, everything keeps happening to attach them to it. That's why I think it's almost destiny that they are going to fail. For example, there was a book coming out about Project
The
2025 that J.D. Vance wrote the forward to.
forward, you know,
Well, he's canceled that till
yeah.
after the election. And now this video that came out, this undercover video by some, I don't know, Canadian or British broadcasters of this guy named Vaught, who was in the Trump administration and was laying out Project 2025 and what they'd hope to do, and it is very draconian. Uh, Basically saying, yeah, Donald Trump's just saying this on TV because he needs to, but he's on board with us.
Of course he is.
The more this stuff comes out, the less chance Donald Trump has from detaching himself from it.
Well, I hope so. See, there are people within a stone's throw of where I live here who probably are all for that. They would just love to have the preacher in charge of everything, quite frankly.
Yeah,
Um, Even though it would eventually impact them, they don't realize that. But
right.
this is at base. This is something that needs to be rooted out of American culture. This idea of religion and politics. It has to be revisited and banned. I don't care if it's you cancel all the tax breaks for the church, what you do, but anybody who is dabbling in politics and religion needs to be stopped because it is a recipe for disaster. It has always been. You cannot point to me any civilization. All you have to do is look at the Muslim world. And I apologize to American Muslims who I know you're not like that. Okay. I get that. You know, I know you don't go along with this, but the mullahs in Iran, the guys who, the Taliban, these guys who want women covered in these robes in the desert in the middle of summer, you know, these assholes, which is what they are, that's what they want. They
Yeah,
want that kind of control over women and over everybody else. And they will kill anybody who stands against them. And that's the guys who are behind Project 2025. It's just a matter of degree. It's not any different. It's the same thing. It's the same exact thing, a way of control and a way of see. We've added to the mix now the oligarchs. You know, before it was the Pope and the King. Well, now we got the oligarchs in there too,
yeah,
who are also supporting this. So we got the big three there. We got religion, we got politics, and we got money.
yeah,
So and of course, the oligarchs see it as well. You know, if people have to work for what I pay them, so good, so much better for me.
right.
You know, and that's what they want to get rid of all the labor stuff. They want to get rid of regulations that keep our water and air clean. They want to get rid of school lunches. They want to starve the public schools. They want to anything that was done in the last half of the 20th century with under Roosevelt and beyond under Johnson and so forth. That's all goes by the wayside. No more Social Security, no more Medicare, no more Medicaid, no more aid to families with dependent children, nothing, no welfare, nothing, no safety net, nothing. They want it all back the way it was in 1898.
Yeah. And that's why I always say that if you don't look at this as anything else, it is the Republicans mounting a war against women, LGBTQ folks, people of color, anybody that's not them. We're getting toward the end here, and I just wanted to bring this up because in a couple of days we're going to have the Democratic National Convention on Monday. We talked about that a little bit about the
Yeah.
possibility of some things happening in and around it for the Republicans to try to make it a shit show. My biggest concern would be the people coming out to protest against Israel. I don't know
Yeah.
if I don't know if you're going to get Trump-fucks out there because they're afraid to get thrown into jail, but you might get some of that out there. And how do you think that'll impact what's going on inside?
Hopefully not at all. I mean, there may be some people who get in who raise their voices and so forth. It's happened at some of Kamala's
Yeah,
appearances and so forth, and she has dealt with it in a fairly good way, I think. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. I mean, if my relatives were being slaughtered by the Israeli bombs, I would certainly be doing everything I could to stop that. I really think we should be doing everything we can to stop it, including holding off the arms that we send over there. Sorry, and believe me, I'm a supporter. I have respect for the people of Israel. I have respect for the people of Gaza. I have no respect for the current government of Israel. They're
No.
no better than the Nazis were in what they're doing here. They have their own Holocaust going on. Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu, you're a Nazi. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of his people realize that and think that. And if this war, he's keeping the war going just so he can stay in power and out of prison. So I understand why people would. You cannot support Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization who did terrible things uh, when they struck against Israel. Terrible, terrible things, and they should all be hunted down and killed. Yes, but the innocent children, women, and just the regular Joes there in Gaza that are being killed, 40,000 of them so far as the new figure by this
Yeah.
indiscriminate bombing and so forth, and even targeted bombing. It's not right. It needs to stop. There needs to be a ceasefire right now, and I don't know how I can't accomplish that. I'm hoping that the new administration can, but if you are supporting the people of Gaza, you cannot vote for Donald Trump.
Right.
What he said was level the place, get it over with, because it's making you look bad.
Right.
You know, he is not going to do anything to stop Netanyahu. He's a big buddy of Netanyahu's. He loves the idea of blowing people up.
Right.
And he would do it too if he could. And he would do it here if he could. One of the things in 2025 project is using the military against protesters, right?
Right. Right.
That's it. That's in there. So yeah, that's I'm hoping that that can be controlled.
Well, the only answer to ending that war in Israel um, is getting Netanyahu out of there. You're exactly right. He's staying in there. He's staying in power just to keep himself safe. So he has no motivation to stop the war. As long as the war goes on, he's safe. And if he ends the war, gets into a ceasefire, then they're going to haul him away and throw him in fucking jail. So something has to be done within the government of Israel, unless they want their people to still die and still be in war, to get Netanyahu out of there. I don't know how they do that exactly, but there's got to be some resolution to that.
Yeah, and we don't encourage violence of any kind, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of parliamentary thing or something. It's difficult to do when there's a war going on, for sure. But Trump is running for president to stay out of prison. Netanyahu's conducting a war to stay out of prison. It's the
Right.
same motivation. These are worthless people. These are anybody who's doing the kind of damage and wholesale slaughter that Netanyahu is doing is to be censured uh, repeatedly over and over again. There's no way that you can possibly defend it.
And as we wrap things up, we got Ukraine and Russia, and
Yeah,
that's going sideways for Putin. He's got to be a little embarrassed right at this point.
yeah, that was a bold move, and I hope they can just going in there, they could pull back right now, and they've sent a message.
Right. Right. Exactly. You're hoping that these are all signs of these dipshits, the Putins, the Trumps, the Netanyahus. They're the times are changing and they're about to get theirs. I get that sense about it.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's talking about going to Venezuela. I wonder why. Because that's another thing that people should look at. Who are Trump's heroes? They're all despots, every
Yeah.
one of them. Whether it's Putin or Maduro or Kim Jong Un, it doesn't matter. They're all strong men. They're all these bosses that just get their way and do whatever they want to do. That's what he wants to be. Of course it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ed, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. Thank you for coming by and spending some time with us. Your schedule's tight. I know it is. But I also want to encourage people to check you out on TikTok and YouTube and such. Give us your particulars so people can find you.
Yeah, just find me. Just go to TikTok at Holler Troll, ERTROLL. It's also titled Reeling in the Years, REALIN apostrophe in the years. But at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL will get you there. I'm getting ready to put up a new one today as to why your vote counts, why one vote makes all the difference. It's historical reference that you don't want to miss.
Absolutely. So check out at Holler Troll on TikTok and at Holler Troll or Reel It in the Years on YouTube. I encourage you to check it out. It's informative, entertaining, and oftentimes lighthearted.
Yeah, I try to not beat it too hard.
All right. Well, Ed, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again next week. For those listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.